In the mist-laden annals of Tamriel's early 4th era, there existed a relic of profound and malevolent power, the Ebony Crown. Forged in the shadowed depths of Cold Harbour by the Daedric Prince Molag Bal, the crown was a cursed artifact, a dark emblem of corruption and ambition. It was said that whoever donned the crown would be granted immense power, but at a terrible cost, for the crown twisted the mind and soul of its wearer, driving them to madness and ruin. The legend of the Ebony Crown was steeped in ominous history and vivid imagery. Tales of its creation recounted how molten ebony was drawn from the heart of Cold Harbour's infernal furnaces, cooled in the blood of innocents, and inscribed with ruins of domination and despair. Molag Bal himself bestowed this dark gift upon King Vuldar of the Reach, a tyrant whose heart was as cold as the Daedric Prince's own. King Vuldar's reign, once marked by brutal conquest and unyielding power, soon became a nightmare of paranoia and tyranny. The crown's influence twisted his thoughts, turning his dreams into visions of betrayal and his desires into obsessions. Under its dark influence, Vuldar unleashed horrors upon his kingdom, inflicting suffering and fear upon his subjects. His madness culminated in a desperate and bloody rebellion, led by his court mage, Thorthrin, who sealed the crown within the mountain, hoping to bury its curse forever. But legends never truly died. The story of the Ebony Crown persisted, whispered in the shadows of Skyrim's rugged terrain. It was a tale of power and peril, a cautionary legend reminding all who heard it of the dangers that lay in the pursuit of absolute dominion. The crown, they said, still waited, its dark power undiminished, ready to ensnare the next soul foolish enough to seek it out. Centuries passed, and the legend of the Ebony Crown became little more than a whispered tale. Yet, as is the way of such legends, it waited with patient malice for the day when it would be found again. In the rugged mountains of Skyrim, where the air was crisp and biting, and the land was both beautiful and harsh, there lived a young Nord miner named Eirik. He was a man of simple means, strong and determined. His hands etched from years of labor in the unforgiving earth. Eirik spent his days chipping away at rock faces, seeking the precious veins of iron ore that promised a modest prosperity. one cold, clear morning, as the sun crested the jagged peaks and cast long shadows into the valleys below, it is said Eirik ventured further into the mountains than he had ever done before. The frost-laden ground crunched beneath his boots, and his breath formed fleeting clouds in the frigid air. He had heard rumors of rich veins hidden deep within the forgotten crags, and his heart thrummed with the hope of discovery. Hours passed as he navigated the treacherous terrain, his pickaxe slung over his shoulder. The silence of the wilderness was broken only by the distant calls of hawks and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. Just as fatigue began to weigh heavily on his limbs, Eirik's keen eyes caught sight of something unusual. A narrow fissure in the rock face, half concealed by a curtain of ivy. Curiosity sparked. He approached the opening and peered inside. The darkness within seemed to beckon him, and with a deep breath, Eirik squeezed through the gap. His boots scuffed against the stone as he descended into the unknown. The light from the world outside, gradually fading until he was enveloped in pitch black. He fumbled for the flint in his pack, striking it to ignite a torch. The flame flickered to life, casting dancing shadows on the rough walls of the cave. Eirik's breath caught in his throat as he ventured deeper. The air grew colder, and an eerie stillness hung heavy in the space. The walls of the cave were adorned with ancient carvings, their meanings lost to time, but their presence speaking of a forgotten past. As he turned a corner, the narrow passageway opened into a vast chamber. The sight that met his eyes made him freeze in awe. The cavern was immense, its ceiling lost in the gloom above. And there, in the center of the chamber, bathed in a faint, otherworldly light, stood a stone pedestal. Eirik's pulse quickened as he approached, his torch held high to pierce the shadows. Upon the pedestal rested the Ebony Crown, Even in the dim light, its dark, polished surface seemed to absorb the torchlight, giving off an almost palpable aura of power and malevolence. The crown was wrought of blackened ebony, its surface intricately carved with sinister runes and adorned with cruel spikes that seemed to promise pain to any who dared wear it. A faint, eerie glow emanated from the ruins, casting flickering patterns on the cavern walls. Eirik's awe was tinged with trepidation as he stared at the relic. The air around it seemed to hum with energy, a whisper of the ancient and the forbidden. His mind raced, recalling the old tales told by the village elders. Stories of a crown that brought both immense power and inevitable ruin. Yet, as he stood there, the allure of the crown grew stronger, tugging at something deep within him. Compelled by a force he could not name, Eirik reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold, smooth surface of the ebony crown. The moment his skin made contact, a shiver ran through him, and a whispering voice seemed to echo in his mind, promising greatness, dominion, and untold power. With a deep breath, Eirik lifted the crown from its pedestal. The faint light around it flared briefly. As he held the crown in his hands, a sense of destiny filled within him. The cave seemed to exhale a sigh as Eirik made his decision. He turned and made his way back through the labyrinth of passages, the crown clutched tightly to his chest. The legend of the Ebony Crown had been reignited, and its influence was about to be unleashed upon the world once more. The journey back to the village was long, but Eirik felt as though he moved with a new purpose. The cold of Skyrim bit at his skin, but he barely felt it. His mind consumed by thoughts of the crown, its dark beauty had captivated him, and the memory of its cold, smooth surface lingered in his thoughts like a shadow. A shadow he could not shake. as he approached his modest home, nestled among the other humble dwellings of the village. Eirik felt a compulsion, a gnawing need to place the crown upon his head. He hesitated only a moment, standing in the dim light of his hearth, before succumbing to the crown's silent call. And with deliberate slowness, he lifted the crown and set it upon his brow. The moment the ebony crown touched his head, a wave of cold fire surged through Eirik's veins. His vision blurred, and for an instant, the world around him seemed to twist and distort. Shadows danced at the edges of his sight, and whispers filled his ears, seductive and insistent. It is said that he saw visions of himself as a great leader, a conqueror, wielding power beyond his wildest dreams. Eirik's initial fascination with the crown quickly grew into an obsession. He found himself constantly reaching up to touch it, feeling the cold against his skin. The whispers in his mind grew louder, urging him to embrace his destiny, to seize control and bend others to his will. It wasn't long before Eirik's behavior began to change. The villagers, who had always known him as a hard-working and honest man, started to notice a shift in his demeanor. Eirik, once humble and kind, became increasingly ambitious. His eyes, once clear and blue like the sky, now held a hard, almost predatory gleam. The first signs of his transformation were subtle. He started speaking with a newfound confidence, his voice carrying a weight that demanded attention. He began to assert his opinions more forcefully, dismissing the concerns of others with a wave of his hand. Those who questioned him found themselves on the receiving end of his sharp tongue, and the friendly banter that had once filled the village square grew tense and uneasy in his presence. One evening, as the village gathered for a communal meal, Eirik stood before them, the crown gleaming darkly atop his head. He spoke of grand plans to lead the village to prosperity, promising riches and power to those who would follow him. It is said that his words were persuasive and laced with a charisma that was hard to resist. Many of the villagers found themselves nodding along, captivated by his grand vision. But not everyone was swayed. Old Sigrid, a respected elder, voiced her doubts. Eirik's response was swift and harsh. It is said he publicly humiliated Sigrid, mocking her age and wisdom, his words dripping with disdain. The villagers watched in stunned silence as their once gentle neighbor unleashed his venom upon her. As the days passed, Eirik's transformation became more pronounced. He began to demand more from the villagers, forcing them to work harder and longer hours. Those who resisted or questioned his orders found themselves ostracized or worse, disappearing without a trace. Rumors of dark deeds and sinister plots began to circulate, but fear kept most mouths shut. Eirik's ambition knew no bounds. He took over the village's resources, hoarding supplies and wealth for himself. And slowly he began to build a personal guard, a group of loyal followers who enforced his will with ruthless efficiency. The village, once a place of cooperation and community, now lived under the shadow of fear. The Crown's influence twisted Eirik's mind further. He saw threats and conspiracies everywhere, suspecting even his closest allies of plotting against him. One fateful night, Eirik's oldest friend, Bjorn, confronted him in the village square. Bjorn had always been loyal, but he could no longer stand by and watch his friend become a monster. "Eirik," he said, his voice filled with sorrow and anger, "this crown is destroying you. You're not the man I once knew." Eirik's response was immediate and brutal. He accused Bjorn of treachery, his voice echoing with the authority of a king. "You dare question me," he thundered. "I am your leader, your savior. Without me, you are nothing." In a fit of rage, Eirik ordered his guards to seize Bjorn. the village watched in horror as Bjorn was dragged away, his cries of protest falling on deaf ears. The village's atmosphere grew tense and uneasy. Those who opposed Eirik's rule began to disappear, one by one. On one particularly chilling night, a group of villagers gathered in secret, huddled around a small fire in the forest. They spoke of their fears, the strange and dark changes that had come over their village. Eirik was a good man, one said, but that crown, it is cursed. It has twisted him into something else. Amidst the growing turmoil, one person remained steadfast and clear-eyed. Freya, the village healer. Now, Freya had known Eirik since childhood. They had grown up together, shared dreams and secrets under the vast Skyrim sky. She knew the kind, determined boy who had always been ready to help others, who had dreamed of finding riches not for himself, but for the village. Freya had always been a pillar of the community. Her knowledge of herbs and remedies passed down through generations. She was respected and trusted, a source of comfort and wisdom. But as Eirik's behavior grew more erratic and cruel, Freya's concern deepened. Determined to understand what was happening, Freya began to research the legend of the Ebony Crown. She delved into ancient scrolls, seeking any mention of a cursed crown and its history. One night, in the dim glow of her fire, Freya came across an old, weathered manuscript. It spoke of the crown's creation by Molag Bal, its dark power, and the madness it had inflicted upon King Vuldar. The scrolls spoke of the crown's insidious whispers, how it fed on the wearer's desires and fears, driving them to acts of madness. She realized that this crown was not just a relic, was a living, malevolent force, corrupting all who dared to wear it. Armed with this knowledge, Freya knew she had to act. She decided to confront Eirik, to try and break the crown's hold. But she also knew that she would need help, wisdom beyond her own, to save her friend and her home. And so it is said that with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, Freya prepared for a journey to seek the counsel of the Greybeards. She knew the path would be perilous, but it was a risk she was willing to take. For the sake of her friend, and for the village she loved, she would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Her journey began at dawn, the first light of the sun casting long shadows over the village she left behind. She carried only the essentials: satchel of herbs, flask of water, and a small knife for protection. The road was long and fraught with danger, but she pressed on, driven by the hope that the Greybeards would have the answers she sought. Days turned into weeks as she traversed the harsh landscape of Skyrim. She climbed steep, rocky trails, her legs burning with the effort. She crossed icy rivers, the frigid water numbing her feet. At night, she sought shelter where she could find it, huddling close to her small campfire for warmth. The howling winds and the cries of distant wolves were her constant companions. Despite the hardships, Freya's spirit remained unbroken. She drew strength from the memories of Eirik's smile, the sound of the villagers' laughter, and the hope of a brighter future. Her journey was a pilgrimage of sorts, each step a prayer for guidance and strength. At last, she reached the foot of High Hrothgar. The ancient steps leading up the mountain seemed endless, disappearing into the clouds above. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the final ascent. When she reached the summit, she was greeted by the solemn silence of the Greybeard sanctuary. The ancient stone walls and towering arches exuded a sense of timeless wisdom and serenity. Freya felt a profound sense of awe and reverence as she stepped into the hallowed halls of High Hrothgar. The Greybeards, ancient and wise, awaited her arrival. They were shrouded in their traditional robes, their faces lined with the wisdom of the ages. They listened intently as Freya recounted the tale of the Ebony Crown and the plight of her village. Their eyes, though old, but sharp with understanding and compassion. As she finished her tale, the eldest of the greybeards spoke. His voice was deep and resonant. The Ebony Crown is indeed a relic of great power and great evil. Its curse is not easily broken, but there is a way, though it is fraught with danger and difficulty. Freya's heart quickened. Please, tell me what I must do, she urged. The elder nodded gravely. To break the curse, you must perform a ritual. This ritual requires 3 crucial items. The first is the blood of a vampire, a servant of Molag Bal. The vampire's blood carries the same dark essence that forged the crown. Freya's eyes widened. A vampire? But where can I find such a creature? You must journey to Morthal, the elder replied. There you will find a coven of vampires. Seek out their lord and obtain his blood. It will not be an easy task, for vampires are powerful and cunning. Freya nodded, determined. And the second item? A fragment of the crown's original pedestal. He continued. This pedestal once held the Ebony Crown, and a piece of it is needed to ground the ritual in its origins. You must return to the cave where Eirik found this crown. The pedestal remains there, its dark power undiminished. I will go there, she said firmly. And the third item. The elder's expression grew even more serious. The third item is an ancient scroll kept in the ruins of Labyrinthian. The scroll contains the incantations necessary to perform the ritual. Labyrinthian is a place of ancient magic and deadly traps. You will need all your wits and courage to navigate its depths and retrieve the scroll. Freya felt a mixture of fear and resolve. The path ahead was daunting, but she knew she had no choice. Thank you, Greybeards, for your wisdom and guidance. I will do whatever it takes to save Eirik and my village. The elder placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes filled with compassion. May the gods watch over you. Go with our blessings. Freya left, ready to face the trials ahead. She would gather the items needed for the ritual and break the curse of the Ebony Crown, no matter what the cost may be. Freya's journey to Morthor was fraught with unease. The village was known for its eerie atmosphere and proximity to vampire lairs. The sky above was overcast, casting a perpetual gloom over the marshlands. Mist curled around the twisted trees, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. Freya's heart pounded as she approached the lair. Foreboding cave, hidden in the shadows of the ancient trees. As she stepped inside, the temperature dropped, and a chilling silence enveloped her. The only sound was the faint drip of water echoing through the dark, winding passages. Freya gripped her small knife tightly, her eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of movement. She knew that vampires were creatures of the night, their senses sharp, their hunger insatiable. Deeper into the lair, she encountered the first of the vampire thralls. Humans turned into mindless servants by their vampire masters. Their eyes were hollow, their movements jerky and unnatural. Freya moved silently in the shadows, allowing her to slip past undetected. Finally, she reached the heart of the lair. There, on a throne carved from the bones of his victims, sat the vampire lord. His eyes glowed with a predatory hunger, and his fangs gleamed in the dim light. Freya took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. The vampire lord rose, his movements fluid and graceful, a stark contrast to his thralls. Who dares enter my domain? He hissed. I seek your blood, creature, Freya replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. for it is the key to breaking the curse of the Ebony Crown. The vampire lord laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the cavern. Foolish mortal, you will only find death here. With a swift motion, he lunged at her. Freya dodged, her knife flashing as she struck at his side. The battle was fierce and desperate. The vampire lord's speed and strength, matched by Freya's agility and determination. She remembered the herbs she carried, and quickly she concocted a mixture that would weaken him. As he advanced again, she threw the potion at him, the liquid hissing as it made contact with his skin. The vampire lord roared, his movements becoming sluggish. Seizing the opportunity, Freya struck him with her knife. The vampire lord collapsed, his body dissolving into ash. Freya quickly collected a vial of his blood, her hands trembling with exhaustion and relief. She had emerged victorious, but the quest was far from over. Freya's next destination was the cave where Eirik had found the Ebony Crown. The journey back was filled with an ominous sense of déjà vu. The memory of Eirik's descent into madness, fresh in her mind. The cave loomed before her, its entrance a dark maw that seemed to swallow the light. As she stepped inside, the air grew thick with the weight of ancient power. The carvings on the wall seemed to writhe and twist, telling the tale of the crown's dark history. Freya moved cautiously, her senses on high alert. The pedestal stood in the center of the cavern. It was a block of dark stone, its surface etched with runes that glowed faintly. Freya approached it slowly, feeling the oppressive energy pressing down upon her. With a deep breath, she struck the pedestal with her knife, chipping away a fragment. The moment the stone broke, the air seemed to shift. The cave groaned as if in pain. shadow swirled around her, and for a moment she thought she saw the ghostly figure of King Vuldar. His eyes filled with madness. Freya didn't linger. She grabbed the fragment and hurried out from the cave, the oppressive presence receding as she emerged into the daylight. The piece of the pedestal felt cold in her hand, a reminder of the dark power it represented. The final part of her quest took Freya to the ruins of Labyrinthian, a place of ancient magic. The icy wind howled through the crumbling corridors, carrying with it whispers of long-dead mages. The ruins were a maze of twisting passages and hidden traps, designed to confound and deter any who dared to enter. Freya wrapped her cloak tightly around her, bracing against the biting cold. She ventured deeper into the ruins. As she navigated, she encountered numerous puzzles and traps. Ancient mechanisms clicked and whirred. Stone doors slid and opened shut, and hidden blades flashed in the dim light. At one point, she found herself in a chamber filled with skeletal remains, their bones arranged in a grotesque tableau. Finally, she reached the heart of Labyrinthian, and in a small hidden chamber she found the ancient scroll. It was a fragile, yellowed parchment, covered in intricate runes and arcane symbols. She carefully unrolled it, her eyes scanning against the text. She could feel the power emanating from the scroll, a palpable force that made her fingers tingle. With the scroll in hand, Freya retraced her steps, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and anticipation. She had faced the darkest corners of Skyrim, defeated a vampire lord, and navigated the treacherous labyrinth. Now, she had everything she needed to break the curse of the Ebony Crown. Freya's return to the village was met with relief and apprehension. The villagers, wary of Eirik's increasingly tyrannical rule, looked to her with hope in their eyes. Freya wasted no time. She gathered a small group of trusted villagers and led them to a hidden glade near the cave where Eirik had found the Ebony Crown. The glade was a serene and secluded spot, surrounded by ancient trees whose branches formed a canopy overhead. The air was thick with a scent of pine and earth, and the ground was covered in soft, mossy grass. Freya chose this place for its tranquility and its proximity to the cave's dark power, believing it would be the perfect setting for the ritual. With the villagers' help, Freya began the preparations. They cleared the ground, creating a large circle surrounded by stones inscribed with protective runes. Freya placed the pedestal fragment at the center of the circle, its dark surface contrasting sharply with the green of the moss. She set up an altar beside it, laying out the ancient scroll and the vial of vampire blood. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the glade, Freya lit candles and incense, their flickering flames and fragrant smoke adding to the mystical atmosphere. She placed bowls of herbs and enchanted stones around the circle, each one carefully chosen for its symbolic significance. The villagers watched in silent reverence, their faith in Freya unwavering. Freya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the task ahead. The night air grew colder, and the shadows deepened as the moon rose high in the sky, casting a silvery light over the glade. With the preparations complete, Freya turned her attention to Eirik. She knew that confronting him would be the most difficult part of her journey. The man she once called a friend had been consumed by the crown's power. But she held on to the hope that she could still reach him, that the Eirik she knew was still there, buried beneath the darkness. And so it is said that she approached the village square, her heart pounding. Eirik stood there, the ebony crown gleaming ominously on his head. His eyes, once filled with warmth, were now cold and distant. He looked at her with a mixture of disdain and suspicion. his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Eirik," she called out, "you must remove the crown. It is destroying you and destroying this village." Eirik's eyes narrowed, and he sneered. "You speak of things you do not understand, Freya. The crown has given me power, and with it, I will lead our village to greatness." Freya stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "This is not you, Eirik. This crown is a curse. It has brought nothing but ruin. Please trust me. Let me help you." And for a moment, Eirik's expression softened, and Freya saw a flicker of the man she once knew. But the crown's influence was strong, and his face hardened once more. "You are a fool, Freya. I will not give up this power." With a roar of rage, Eirik lunged at her, its sword flashing in the moonlight. Freya dodged, her heart breaking as she realized the extent of the crown's hold on him. The villagers, seeing their healer in danger, rushed to her aid. A fierce struggle ensued, Eirik's strength fueled by the crown's dark power. Freya fought with all her might, using her knowledge of herbs and potions to weaken Eirik. The villagers, inspired by her bravery, joined the fray, their collective efforts finally overwhelming him. They managed to restrain him, binding his hands and forcing him to his knees. Tears streamed down Freya's face as she looked at her old friend, now a shadow of his former self. "Eirik, please, let me save you." With Eirik restrained, Freya and the villagers carried him to the hidden glade. They placed him in the center of the ritual circle, his eyes wild with fury and fear. Freya stood before him, the ancient scroll in one hand, and the vial of vampire blood in the other. She began to chant the incantation, her voice strong and clear. The words, ancient and powerful, resonated through the glade, causing the air to hum with energy. As she poured the vampire blood onto the crown, the ruins on its surface began to glow, casting an eerie light. The crown seemed to resist, vibrating violently as if trying to escape. Freya continued to chant, her voice rising in intensity. With a final triumphant shout, Freya completed the incantation. The crown shuddered and then shattered into pieces, releasing a wail of anguish that echoed throughout the night. The spirit of King Vuldar, dark and twisted, was banished, its presence dissolving into the air. The aftermath was a moment of profound silence. The oppressive energy lifted, and the glade seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Eirik, freed from the crown's influence, collapsed to the ground, his body shaking with sobs of relief and regret. Freya knelt beside him, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. "It's over, Eirik. You are now free." The villagers gathered around, their faces filled with awe and gratitude. The pieces of the Ebony Crown lay scattered on the ground, a dark power extinguished. In the days that followed, the village began to heal. Eirik, deeply remorseful for his actions, dedicated himself to rebuilding and atoning for the harm he had caused. And Freya continued her work as a healer, her bond with the villagers now stronger than ever. And the tale of the Ebony Crown became a legend, a cautionary story passed down through generations. And the villagers built a shrine in the glade, a reminder of the perils of unchecked ambition and the power of courage and compassion.